Good morning, everyone. It's Miss Kristy from East Pennsboro Library, and I'd like to say welcome back to Jim Leonard from the East Pennsboro Historical Society. We are so happy we are able to meet again and get you some good historical information for our township. And today, of course, Jim is going to talk with us about what is on everyone's mind in Enola, the Enola Miller House. That being said, Jim, I'll give the floor to you.
Thanks a lot, Kristy. I'm glad to be back. It's been a long time and everybody's itching to get out of the house. So we were going to be there this morning, and hopefully one of these days we'll get back up there and do an actual video shoot right at the house at 1st and Miller Street in Somerdale, where the house sits today. So this morning I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of the house, the family, the farm, and so forth. And there are a lot of dates and names and so forth that I can't really recall a lot of. I'm not young anymore, and my memory isn't as good as it used to be to remember all these dates and places. But we're going to talk about the Longsdorf farm and the family of Enola Miller, her grandfathers. The first thing we want to touch on is Henry Longsdorf was the original owner of the house. He purchased the property and the house from a Mr. Carson back in 1812, which is hard to imagine. Henry and his wife farmed the property, and he built the house, completing it between 1841 and 1852 when he passed away. He had a wife by the name of Harriet, and when he died, he left her $100 and the house and the farm. So they had some children. One of them was George Longsdorf, his son, and he eventually ended up as the owner of the house, and he continued to farm the land. And of course he had a family. He married a young lady by the name of Martha Magdalena Forer, and they continued to farm the land all the way up and through the middle 1850s and the late 1850s. In 1848 they had a daughter by the name of Frances Longsdorf, and she eventually married Wesley Miller, and they married and eventually had Enola Miller and her siblings. So we're going to take a look at some of the photographs we have over here of the family and the farm. So first of all, I guess what we want to look at is the house. Now, there is a picture of the house here. I guess you can get a good shot at that. This is what the house may have looked like without the extended garage.
Can we slide?
We can. We're going to slide this open so there isn't as much of a glare.
Thank you so much. Oh, that's so much clearer.
Yeah. So that farm property was huge. They had hundreds and hundreds of acres of farmland, and it was all around Somerdale, all the way to the river, which is hard to imagine because when you look out there today off of Route 11 and 15, you're actually looking at the rail yard and you can't really picture what that might have looked like. First Street out of Somerdale was actually an old farm road, and it actually weaved itself all the way down to the river. There were a lot of farms down along the river. There was a Longsdorf family that had a farmhouse down along the river, and down along the river is where the original track that went north and south from the northern part of the state all the way down into Maryland. So that track, you know, is still there. It's called the old line, and between there and where the house stood before they moved it, that was all farmland and belonged to a lot of different farmers in the early days. So as we move along, and we're going to talk a little bit about Enola Miller, but as we get there, we're going to find that she was born to Wesley and Frances. I'm going to show you a picture of Wesley and Frances first. This is them approximately late 1800s when Enola Miller was just a young girl.
Thank you for sliding that glass.
Now, we have a picture of Enola Miller here when she was about 6 years old, and we're very fortunate to have this beautiful portrait. She looks like they may have taken a little bit on their own to do some watercoloring and making her hair blonde, because the later picture we have of her, she had very dark hair. I'd like to take a quick pause and get myself set for the next part that I want to talk about. And they lived in Wyoming Avenue. Charlie and his wife Ann, they lived up in North Enola, just beyond Wyoming Avenue on Columbia Road. Now, this is all pretty close down here in town, and most everybody in the town knows where both of those streets are. But thinking about some future event that Kristy and I are going to go on down the line here, maybe a couple of months from now, we're going to take a walking tour down through Enola. But we're not going to get to the point of where this house was that Charlie and Ann lived in. But we are going to point out a picture of Uncle Charlie when he was a young boy, and a clock that he had as a young family man, that in his family, that was bought in Enola at a clock shop that used to be on East Columbia Road. I'm not sure exactly which house that was in, but it was, if you come in off 11 and 15, it would have been on the left-hand side, across from the big blue, what used to be the appliance store, and that was eventually called the Enola Dormitory, where the railroaders slept when they were taking rest from their home terminal, coming in and out of Enola.
I remember, Jim, when we did our little video last year that people could check out on the online programming tab, you talking about that turn station,
Yeah.
and also talking about that building. So if anybody wants to review that, they can check that out on there also. And
so we were very fortunate. As I was saying, we got this clock from one of Charlie's nieces, Judy Jacobs, who used to work here as a volunteer. She was one of the first workers here with Herb Kruger, and she eventually had to move on because of her age and couldn't volunteer for us anymore. But she was very kind in donating this clock, which is well over 100 years old, and it came from a clock store in Enola, Pennsylvania. So we're proud to have this clock and some pictures of Charlie when he was a young boy. He looks very studious with his glasses and his suit, and that's the look of the day. So we're just very, very thrilled to have all this. So we're going to go back over here to the display case and talk a little bit more about this house. Now, the transition of the house eventually coming into our hands has been a long road. The house itself went through many different families over the years. One of the doctors who worked at the animal industry place that used to be up in the back of that property that's being developed as a new housing development for apartments. He lived in this house for a while. There was a family by the name of Richter who lived in that house, and their father worked up at the laboratory also. It's just probably about a half a dozen different families over the years lived in the house, but it eventually became vacant, and it was purchased from the town of East Pennsboro by a private industrialist who wants to develop the corner down there into a store and a bank and a motel and a few other businesses. So he owned it, and he more or less bargained with us here at the Historical Society in our endeavor to save it, and eventually he signed it over to the house, that is, not the property, to the borough of East Pennsboro. Now, we don't own it yet, but we're eventually going to own it. Because of the development that is occurring down there in Somerdale, that house had to be moved. Unfortunately, they want to put a swale in there that's going to be a water collection place for the runoff water that's going to be coming out of the development of the apartments. So they decided they were going to, in order to save it, they'd have to move it. So earlier this year, I guess most everybody in the whole world practically knows that the house was moved, and they had the media there, the all the different TV stations where they're taking videos. There were some private videos, and we posted one private video on our on our Facebook page, and a lot of folks have had a chance to look at that. So it was very interesting. It started around 6 o'clock in the morning that morning.
It took a very, very, very long time and a long day, if I recall correctly.
It did, and it moved from the base of First Street and Valley Street all the way up around the field, and eventually ended up at what is now called 51 Miller Street. It's at the corner of Miller and First Street, about 3 blocks up the road, but it took all day to get there. Now, I did forget to highlight one very, very important step in this process. One of the things that was really important to happen in our quest to save the house was awarded and recognized as a historic place in Cumberland County. Now, when that happened, we were given a plaque. We had a big celebration up there in June of 2019, and there were hundreds of people there out here in the field looking upon the house. And right here in this little corner of the house here between the window and the door, that's where that plaque is eventually going to be when we get all settled in up at First and Miller Street. So getting this plaque and getting the recognition of being one of the historic places in Cumberland County, that was another part of the step of saving the house. And the reason I say saving the house, looking back at our process, I'm thinking about some of the things that were thrown out to us that there was no way they're going to save that house, we were told. And they were going to tear it down. And we were really going wacko up here at the Historical Society between myself and our board of directors and some of our volunteers here. You know, we went on a quest and we had to save that house. And he was going to tear it down, the owner, and just give us a pile of rocks so we could build a memorial to the Enola Miller House. And very fortunate, this step, the process of getting it recognized, put the owner of the house on the spot. You know, is he going to be a bad person and tear that house down after all of this media presence? And, you know, it just kind of gave him an opportunity to be a nice guy. And he turned around and said, well, we'll save the house and we'll move it for you.
Oh, wonderful. So a nice guy plus.
Yeah, well, he's an industrialist. Mm-hmm. And what do? In the process, a lot of times, you know, they purchase a property, and they look at the property as, in the future, in their mind, as, you know, motel, Turkey Hill, restaurant, gas station, and also a runoff place, you know, for the development, because all that property is on a hill and that water all runs downhill. And in the process, you know, he's overlooking, here's this historic house or any kind of historic place on that property that's very important to a community. So we did our diligent duty and forced the issue, and he moved the house. Now, I'm not going to go through the process of how that looked coming up around the hill, but I do have a current photograph here of the house sitting at number 51 Miller Street. Now I'm going to put my hand out here. The house came, when it was moved, came up this hill in the dirt and around the back here and then up through here and out this way so that the front door would be facing First Street. Now at this point in this developed process, the house is now in a situation where it has been put on its foundation, and they have cleaned everything up underneath the base of the house on its new foundation. They have coated it, and they are getting ready to weatherproof it with the black tar stuff that they put on the house to keep it from getting water. And so in the future, all the dirt's going to be pushed in. There's going to be a walkway down into the cellar basement where the furnace is going to be. And eventually, the Historical Society is going to have a building back here between the parking lot and the house. We're in the process of making plans to have our new Historical Society, which is going to move from 410 Cherry Street right here up to that area. When we get up there, and that's not too far in the future as we think about it, later this year there's a good possibility the building will be in the process of being built behind it. Now, when that building is finished, we will move from there. From here at 410 Cherry up to our new Historical Society location. We will get settled in and have our museum partly in there. And then eventually, when we get the house completely cleaned up inside and get it to the point where we can actually use it as a showcase, we're going to put a lot of our museum pieces that we have here in showcases in the house so that we can give a tour of the house so that you can see what the house looked like back at its completion time around 1841. We don't know exactly when the house would start. We think it may have even started back in the 1820s because all that rock, all that mountain stone had to be hauled down from the mountain in order to be put into the developed house. So it took a long time for the farmers to haul rock down from the mountain to build a mountain stone house. So between 1820 and 1841 is the actual age of the house. And we are just at a point of being very prideful, I guess you could say. We saved the house, and it's being put in a situation where it's going to really, really look nice in the community. Unfortunately, behind it is where all these new apartments are going to be. They're going to be 1- and 2-bedroom apartment rental properties. Around 260 of them between the house and down where the house used to sit. So there was it was a long process to get to this point. So I don't want to be jumping back and forth, and getting everybody mixed up about some of the things that happened between the 1960s and now. But I do want to show you a little bit of the interior of the house when somebody actually lived in it, to give you a little bird's eye view of probably what it looked like inside a stone house back in the day. So I'm going to bring this photo out, Kristy, so that it's not a glare. There's a beautiful spiral staircase in the house. There's a beautiful fireplace in the house that a lot of people who have been in the house didn't know was there because right now it's still sealed up. So we're going to eventually make this place really look sharp and bring that fireplace out to exposure and get some kind of a mantle up if there isn't one there. We don't know that for sure yet. This looks a little weird, but that's actually a closet, and you can see the back part of the house into the closet area. They didn't have a door on it. So there's an old tube TV. That'll take you back a few notches too. So it's beautiful in the house when you think about it. It's got those great big thick walls. Here's another picture of the house with the door shut, of course. And it looks like from the time that photo was taken till this was taken, a lot of the mantle stuff was sealed up and the wall was coated with some kind of substance that they would use to make it look sharp. Here's a little closet that's built into the one wall. Now I have to let you know that the interior of the house was, over the years, made look pretty rough. There's a lot of graffiti on the walls that we had to coat before we gave our little tour when the house was given that plaque. So they had a chance to walk through and look at it for a day, but prior to that we had to do a lot of work in there to make it look a little half decent for people to look at the interior. So this wasn't there that they could look at when we had our tour that day. But it's what it is it's giving you an idea of how much work we have to do. Once we get that house in our name, called the Historical Society of East Pennsboro, we're going to really make it look nice. We're going to try to take it back to at least the 1890s or early 1900s. We're going to try to make it look real nice inside and have a museum in it. I don't know for sure how long it'll take for us to get upstairs. We have bedrooms up there. There's actually four big bedrooms upstairs and a bathroom that really, really need a lot of work. So I don't think anybody will probably be going up there the first year. But if we can get the folks to bring their tours in, get inside the first floor, I'm sure that'll suffice for most people who want to see what that house looked like in its early days.
Jim, I have to just pause you for 1 second and tell you how much, personally, being a resident here, I appreciate all of the history that made this happen, and the fact that there are people like you all who are willing to go out there and make these things happen and be patient and go through the trials and tribulations and continue with a long-term game plan. And I'm hoping that some other people jump on board and help you all out too, man-wise, labor-wise, financially, because it is so important, especially right now. We've figured out how important our history really is.
You're absolutely right. We're talking about the possibility of a $250,000 to $500,000 project because of the importance of getting back to the standard of that time and modernization of electricity and stuff that needs to be in the house. It's going to be a real long process, and it's going to be a big financial process. One of the things we're doing right now is we're selling brick pavers, and I'm going to give you an opportunity to come up close and look at this. We're going to sell 4 different types of bricks as our fundraiser. This is one of our first fundraisers. We take donations, cash-wise, that we have set aside for the process of saving and remodeling, of course, the house. And it's the beginning. You know, it was baby steps to go from one process to the next. And we hit one wall after another as we were going through the process, and I'm sure we're going to hit a lot of other brick walls. We're negotiating with the Township, who actually owns the property and the house right now. The commissioners are doing their best to try to meet our needs in order to go through the process of us signing the dotted line and taking ownership of the house. And we have some needs that need to be met before we can actually sign that dotted line. We want the house and we want the property, and we're willing to take it. But we need to make sure we have a lot of our other special needs taken care of before we can do that. So it's not the end of the world if we don't have it right now, but we're getting very close to being the actual owner of the property and going forward with the building process of our new museum and also the actual house itself.
It is going to be so exciting to come across the river from the East Shore and to just know that, hey, right off this exit is something historical that my family can tour. I can take them there and they can learn a little bit of history and just that old feeling. And I know it's a long way down the road, but gosh darn, we really do appreciate all you all are doing to make it happen and all that the Township's doing. I
appreciate that, and we know that. And one of the other important things is manpower. She mentioned that we need help, and we actually do. We only have about 4 or 5 people on our committee who are working the process of getting the ball rolling for our new museum. So we need volunteers. We actually need some volunteers here in our historical society, because most of us are 65 to 84, and we have like 7 or 8 of us, and we're starting to wear out, and we need replacements. We need some people who are home idle, who have the skills to come in and run a business a little bit and help us with the process of moving forward, keeping our historical society active and ready to take people in and show them what our town looked like in the early days and what it's going to look like in the future. So I appreciate you coming down, Kristy, so much.
Oh, Jim, it's so very, it really is truly exciting just to be here again and to be able to video again. And because you're talking about manpower, I just want to put in a little pitch because it's summer break right now for our high schoolers, college kids, other people. A lot of people are going to be working from home for a while yet. The Historical Society is open on Tuesday.
We're open here on Tuesday and Thursdays, 9 to 3. Our phone number is 717-732-5801. Give us a call if you have an interest in helping us out, and we'll set up an appointment because we need people with certain skills. We need to talk to you about them.
Great. Thank you once again, Jim, so much. And I look so forward to our next meeting, which we'll hopefully take up to the house, and we will go from there.
I'll see you on Facebook.
Hey, all right.